Hello, 1D. This is part 2 of our late investiture controversy as we keep talking about what is the role of the church and the state. And if you recall, the key part was in slide on the PowerPoint, slide 17, right? Papal supremacy, where Cardinal Humbert is putting forth a logical theory. And if A and B are true, then we follow to C. In A, the king has supreme authority in secular matters. The Pope is supreme in spiritual matters. B, spiritual matters are more important than secular. And remember, in this point in history, everybody accepted this. Therefore, C, the Pope has the highest authority. And what I mentioned last time is this is a great theory, but can it be put into practice? And the man who will do that was in slide 18, a monk from Cluny, who becomes a cardinal and then is elected to the papacy. His name is Hildebrand, but he takes the papal name, Pope Gregory VII. And in 1075, Gregory publishes something I put in slide 19, right? Dictatus Papae. And I'm not looking for you to memorize those, but if you read through them, especially the ones I put in blue, that the Roman pontiff alone can with right be called universal, that his legate can pass sentence of deposition against them, he can depose people, that of the Pope alone all princes shall kiss his feet. And the very last one on that page, right? That it may be permitted him to depose emperors. That's a shot across the bow, right? He's saying he has more power than the emperor. On the slide 20, that he may be judged by no one, that the Roman Church has never erred, nor will it err to all eternity, and then in red, that undoubtedly the Pope has to be a saint. Again, you can say whatever you want, but Henry versus Gregory in slide 21, it is going to come a challenge now. Henry wants to provoke Gregory, test this theory of his. So the Pope also says that he has the right to release subjects from an unjust king. Again, the hint is that Henry is not a just king, and the Pope, in the realm of Christendom, wants to restore law and order. Gregory actually wrote to Henry before this, too, that saying, "It would have been becoming to you, since you confess yourself to be a son of the church, to give more respectful attention to the master of the church, that is, to Peter, Prince of the Apostles." Well, in 1075, the Bishop of Milan dies. So the See of Milan, if you're looking at slide 21, is open. And the whole lay investiture controversy, who chooses the bishop? Is it the local king, or is it somebody in the church? Remember when we went back to St. Augustine? The people chose him. Right? Now it's switched. Now, who has the authority to choose a bishop? So Gregory appoints a bishop as his right as head of the church. Then Henry chooses a candidate to become bishop. And now we have this dilemma. Who is the real bishop? And Henry calls a council of German bishops to denounce Gregory, call him an anti-pope. And in 1076, Gregory does what is considered shocking. Right? He excommunicates Henry. And try to imagine now, excommunication. You are no longer in communication. Social distancing at its most. It's not like today, where you think of, well, I don't like a particular priest, I'll just go to the next parish. We're talking about Christendom, where society, politics, economics, religion are all intertwined, right? This is Christ's domain, Christ's society. We have a world that is dominated by Christian ideas. You've been kicked out. This is shocking. and you're not able to receive the sacraments, you're cut off entirely from the life of the community. This is Christendom. There's only one church. You cannot go to any other church. It is a shocking victory for the papacy and for papal supremacy. But in some ways, it's also very short-lived. But I like if you turn to this slide 22. I tried to blow up that picture, and it became a little more blurry, but it's a fascinating depiction of Henry. And take a look at what Henry is wearing. I'm going to try to look closely. Doesn't look like a king. He's wearing sackcloth. He's barefoot. And I hope you can remember when we did the Order of Penitence with the Sacrament of Reconciliation, Henry has entered the Order of Penitence. He wants to beg forgiveness, and he's traveled through the winter snow on his knees outside the papal palace to beg for confession. It's not in Rome, though. It's in Canossa. It's away from the crowds. There's an interesting move by Henry. The Pope, just think of this image here. What a great victory. The Emperor is on his knees begging for forgiveness. Papal supremacy. But Gregory does not trust him. Gregory does not trust his intentions. It makes him wait 3 days outside. But Gregory is from Cluny, a reform-minded monastery. He's a reformed priest. Here is a man who is begging you for forgiveness, which you were ordained to do. God gave you the authority to bind and to loosen. Here is a man asking for forgiveness. How will God judge you? And in the end, Gregory is a good priest, not a great politician, because he will forgive Henry. He will grant absolution. He will lift the ban of excommunication. And Henry will immediately go back to Germany to gather supporters to overthrow the king that they placed in his stead. There's a civil war within Germany. In 1080, Gregory excommunicates Henry again. I know slide 23 says Henry, it should be Henry excommunicated again. Dr. Wallen must have done this. And there's a little impact the second time he excommunicates him. People are like, well, you did it once. And I think Gregory might have misunderstood why people supported him. In the beginning, everyone is shocked. Right? I think Henry is shocked that the German princes turned away from him. And Gregory interpreted that as people supporting papal supremacy. What we don't know is how much they just didn't like Henry. And maybe the German princes wanted more power for individual princes and not for the emperor. So there might have been mixed motives that Gregory understood as a sign of papal supremacy, but maybe wasn't all papal supremacy. Gregory becomes very inflexible, that even his cardinals start to abandon him, that they think he's too strict. And Henry then kills Rudolph and manipulates the election of a rival pope, which makes Gregory flee in exile as pope. By the way, Santa is pissed that Rudolph is killed, but that's a separate slideshow. Norman troops will rescue Gregory, but basically Gregory dies in exile in 1085. Slide 24 shows how the church tries to have a resolution to this and the lay investiture controversy. What is the role of choosing bishops? What is the role of the church? What is the role of the state? When you have a church state in Christendom, what is the role of each party in choosing spiritual leadership? There's a city in German called Worms. In 1122, there's an agreement reached. And as you could read through those slides, I want you to think about who wins. You got bishops selected by the clergy according to church law. Score 1 for the church. The king can be present at the election. Sounds benign, but think about it. Suppose I, as Pope, declare that you guys are going to have an election, and there's no way I want Reese being elected. My presence at the election can influence the election, right? Depending on how powerful that person is. So score 1 for the king. The third one, the king could not invest the bishop with the spiritual symbols. Remember the mitre, the crozier, which is the staff, and the ring. So score 1 for the church. The king cannot invest him, but it was expected the king would give the bishop a fief, a piece of land, and the bishop could perform homage for that. Homage meant you got on your knees before your lord. So this is kind of a mixed bag. And it seems ultimately the king has a little bit of advantage because suppose you elect Reese anyway, and Reese is performing homage. I could walk away. I could ignore it. So it's sort of an uneasy truce that we haven't figured out. And this plays up until the modern day. In the early church, we talked about people electing their own bishops. Then it became just the clergy. Then we see that political officials are manipulating elections, and it's bad for the church. So the church wants to regain control over selecting bishops. That is how the church, to this day, in the modern world, the Pope chooses who would be bishop. And part of that idea is that local countries, local politicians would not influence that. There's good to that, but sometimes we wonder if that's... does the Pope know New York City well enough to be able to pick an appropriate spiritual leader? Those are questions people might ask. But slide 25 and 26 is a quote from an encyclical written by Pope Benedict XV, 16th, in 2005, Deus Caritas. Kind of asking us this question: what should be the relationship of church and state? And that's going to be one of your next essay assignments that I want you to write. Based on what you've learned, what should be the relationship between the church and state? And take a special look at slide 26. It says, the church cannot and must not take upon herself the political battle to bring about the most just society possible. She cannot and must not replace the state. Yet at the same time, she cannot and must not remain on the sidelines in the fight for justice. She has to play her part through rational argument, and she has to reawaken the spiritual energy without which justice, which always demands sacrifice, cannot prevail and prosper. So some food for thought. And our next class will be about how the Eastern Church views the Petrine privilege or papal authority. Bye.